Really? They're in jail. All right.
There are no scheduled hearings, public input may be provided using the following methods. Contact our office at office@ma.gov. You can call 774-872-920. Excuse me, 774-872-0920 during the meeting. You can also go on Zoom. The meeting ID number is 819-5019-7628, and the passcode is 577-360. For YouTube channel for later viewing, and hopefully we stream live on channel 9 cable. Our next regular meeting is May 12th at 6 p.m. I'm going to ask everybody, let me do a roll call if the members are here. Mr. Hyde, present. Present. Mr. Dr. Z, present. And Ken Pacheco is present. I'm going to ask everybody to stand for the pledge of allegiance and also for a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Master for a moment of silence for the following people. Ray Levesque, Jose Almeida of North Brighton. He was married for 62 years to Revelia and had one daughter. David Killen was born in Dayton, graduated from Dayton High School, and had one, and was also a volunteer firefighter in Dayton. And James Stein. He was married to Paula Watson for 39 years, and he was a Dayton plumbing inspector. As always, we give our sympathy to their families and friends. Thank you. Thank you. Schedule appointments. The first one is Ethan Cable regarding the Eco Star project. The farmhouse, this table. Ethan, please. You know, you can do it all.
Topic of my presentation is Eagle Scout project I plan to carry out with a team of volunteers. We made, assembled, varnished, and hung up owl boxes in the Broad Cove Conservation Area. During the course of a few weekends, we planned, cut, built, varnished, and hung 15 owl boxes, 4 of which went to other members of other communities. Altogether, we had 17 members, including me, 3 registered BSA youth, 1 other youth, 3 registered BSA adult leaders, and 8 other adults. And with all of them, we had 191 hours and 30 minutes in man hours. Despite all of the funding, we had these perfect amounts with $612.17. Our beneficiary was William Burnett and the Dayton Conservation Commission. We were asked to put together a poster to hang at Broad Cove, and it is currently hanging in the bulletin board outside of the west entrance. Many people have asked questions about what they are, including some people who are convinced that they are cameras to keep watch over the tracks. We made sure to inform them of the true purpose of the boxes, and we have even received some thanks for our project. I've done a ton of research, and my volunteers have put a lot of work into making the local environment a safer place for owls. I I would like you to think, I would like to thank you for having me and for giving a hoot about the environment.
I can say that the board of selectmen look very properly. Did you want to speak also? Or does Mom want to
No,
speak?
I'm here to. Well, it's not matter.
You did a great job. So, board members have any questions? I took a look at the,
Even as a former scholar, true faith, outside of history is now a true through. I made it to the rank of Life Scout, so I know how incredible the way being an Eagle Scout and being an Eagle Scout, how important it is. I commend you for the work that you do. I wish you the best.
Thank you, sir.
does the board have an opportunity to look at the pictures that were presented in the packet? Did a good job. Good. Excellent work. Thank you very much. Next item is Tony Rosario, the Government Commission to hold a cruise night event at the time, for the time later in Vietnam vets. They've done this in the past, they've done it before, I in the past few years. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. This is the 12 or 13 years we've been doing it for the Vietnam vets. You know, this is the guys, I bring cars in, old cars, and I have it's not a van, it's a doo-wop. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Eddie Lopes, the Villanelles, and they sing all the old songs, and we have a good time. And all the guys from the cars, they're all, from the 60s, from going to Vietnam and all that stuff. And we do hot dogs and hamburgers, and we raise money. It's all close to the scholarship. Fund for the veterans, but the scholarships are given out to all the areas, high school, Rainham, BP, Aggie, Dayton, Rehoboth, Taunton, and that's it. And I have a good time. And this is all weather permitting. One little drop, that's it. I mean, you cancel because some of you guys will not do your times up. And it's only once a month, and for 4 hours, and that's about it.
Is it the last Saturday of each month?
The last Saturday of each month, yes. Last Saturday. Like I say, that's all weather permitting. As I know, I got all my paperwork in, insurance and everything. So
I've attended in the past. It's a great event. That group that they're talking about plays music from my generation, not disease, but my generation. His parents play some music. But it is a great time.
it is a lot. We get a lot of people, not everybody, everybody's over 60, and they dance over there, and it's we have a good time, and keep this place clean and all that. So there's no kids, no squeaking. I don't know about that. Maybe one got my spinning wheel, but other than that, it's all in fun. It's all to raise money for scholarships. That's all we do.
And you don't have to dance, you can sit there just listen.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can, it's a good time. Like I said, for 3 to 4 hours, and that's it.
And the old cars are just great.
Yeah,
People who bring the cars, they stand by the cars.
Brings back memories, on some of those old cars, so I got 2, so. And that's it.
Does the board have any questions?
No, I don't have a question. Did you have a question? Well, actually, I'm delighted to see that this is going to be restarted.
The what?
I am delighted to see that this is going to be restarted.
Yes.
I think we're starting to turn the corner.
Yes.
This is awesome.
I was just watching the news, and they're saying by the end of this month, coming May, everything more or less is going to be back to normal. Even Six Flags, I'll open up.
Hey, just in time.
So that's it.
I was just gonna make a comment. Okay. No, I was just gonna say, I'm also, I echo Selectman Paul's sentiments. My uncle, John Fournier, shows his Trans Am
Yeah,
every year when you have that. event.
Yeah, yeah.
He'll be there, I'm sure. It is a nice event. I
Yeah.
look forward to it.
Thank you.
This is a good organization. That's all there's really about that.
Yeah.
It runs,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, like I said, I would say probably 80 to 90% of the guys, there, so they all did. You know.
I was in it when it was going on, so like you said, Vietnam era, some guys say Vietnam vet. I never got to go over there. I was in it in 71. Didn't get over to 75, so. And that's it.
entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we approve Mr. Rosario's request to use behind Town Hall for cruise nights as presented.
Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Howard? Aye. Dr. Z? Aye. And Ken Pacheco, aye. You got our permission and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you guys, and stop in and have a hamburger or hot dog, and that's it. You know? All right, thank you.
Before you go, Mr. Rosario, Mr. Chairman, it says, or there is a specific request to waive the fees. Do we have to make a motion if there's any figure on that specific? I think we have in the past.
Yeah.
Okay.
Glad you was on Dr. Z brought it up.
I read the packet.
I forgot about that.
Yes, we will, entertain a motion to, waive the fee.
Thank you.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Mr. Howard? Aye. Dr. Z? Aye. Ken Pacheco says aye also, so the fee has been waived.
Again, thank you guys.
Again,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Have a good night.
So the next, we have a lot of stuff on the agenda. So we move right on to the next item. Selectmen funding for the vaccine, something on social media website. It's also going to be regular website. And we're looking forward to all to working with you and getting all of our residents to safely vaccinated. So that's great news that we have a very local, someone that's had to go to the place directly get our vaccine. So just an update on the information that's been going on with COVID. For the week of April 19th to April 25th, we've had confirmed cases of 11. We have a total positive to date, 715. Total of deaths today is 7. And the Board of Health has received 85 calls in the past week. And they've sent out 46 calls with tracing calls. 237 have been fully vaccinated as of the previous week. Fortunately, we had no additional deaths. They registered nobody that's been homebound, but they helped people get pre-registered. It's like 6 people. Just to give you some statistics, how valuable I think anyway it is to get the vaccinations. For the week of April 19th to April 25th, 4 people have been positive from the age of 0 to 19 years old. 20 to 29 is 2. 30 to 39 is 2, 40 to 49 is 2, 50 to 64 is 1, and for those of us who are 65 and older, it's been 0. So I think it's clearly important that we get vaccinated. Obviously, seniors like myself, we're able to vaccinate early than others. We had a total of 2,100 people who died fully vaccinated, which is about 25% of our residents. Obviously, those under 16 can get vaccinated, so there's probably a little bit more for those that are eligible to get vaccinated. But it's so important to get vaccinated. This is the only way we're going to beat this problem. And as you can hear, things are getting better. I know it's like going down a little bit, hopefully tomorrow we're gonna find that we're in yellow, we're still in red at this one. That's my report. Any questions about?
Thank you, that's good. Thank you.
Next agenda item is discretionary spending request. Item message for $15,525. Is Mr. Ferry? Yes, it is. Mr. Ferry, you want to explain to us what you're asking for, please?
Just bear with me. The audio is still kind of terrible. I have to hear the delayed response from across the room. All right, so you have the information in the packet. Nope, lost the video. Okay.
Can't see you anymore, Mr. Ferry.
Here we go. All right, so yes, working with the Board of Health last year and also that emergency response committee we have, the discussion came up several times about more message boards in our town to get the word out for different reasons. The quote you have in the packet there still is good. That was way back in June. That's off the state bid list. These boards are a little smaller than ours. They're easier to find different places to install them. The one we have we're limited because of the size of it. It's 10 feet wide, and you got to, when it's on the side of the road, you got to be off the road a little bit. And plus, you got to consider the distance to go to it. The original request was for 2. We have that 1 10-footer now. We, myself and Brett, we worked with, we had recently purchased 2 more off the state surplus. One is definitely not going to work, so we're scavenging that, and we're hopefully going to have another one working out of that, but that's not 100% yet. So speaking with Mike, we need to consider at least 1 so we can continue making the public awareness with the different messages that we have. Currently, I have messages to go out from the Board of Health all the way through June, and I have to continue moving it around. So additional boards would greatly get the word out, and I wouldn't have to be moving it around as much.
So it's the total cost $15,525.
That is the cost per unit.
Are we talking 1 unit?
Yes, $13,525 per 1 unit. So if we did 2, the cost would be just over $27,000, I believe. So like we have reached out, actually, the town accountant did reach out to A&F, to the CARES team. And this expense is reimbursable through the CARES program. So I'm just really, I don't want to open up a floodgate saying this, but I did have a discussion with A&F earlier this week. And so our total allotment available to Dayton is right around $700,000. And we've been reimbursed to date for about just over $100,000 in expenses. Yes, we do. Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a recommendation that we buy 2?
So yes, I would recommend I actually buy 2 at this point. The message boards, in terms of getting information out to the community, it's actually, with all the social media and everything else, it's actually very good to hear that people are still relying on the tried and true ways of getting information out. And the message boards, especially with the homebound vaccinations, have had an amazing impact. So I'd recommend 2. Yes, it is, Mr. Hall.
But not 100%, it's only 25%.
Those are FEMA costs. Those are FEMA, but the CARES Act funding, that is through the state allotment. And those reimbursed at 100% of the cost. That's how it was at the beginning, but it's actually since morphed based on, so with the last federal administration, what was being funded by FEMA, the state has actually picked up, actually much more of those expenses. Am I correct? Town accountant Laviolette?
That's correct. So initially FEMA was going to reimburse us for eligible costs up to 75% of the cost. CARES would reimburse the additional 25%, leaving the town whole that way. However, the rules have changed, and anything that FEMA won't reimburse us for, CARES will pick up the full 100% of the cost.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So the total would be, if I'm correct, $27,050 even?
Correct.
For 2 units. Okay, and that should be the motion, correct?
Yes. Yes, Dr. Z, thank you.
I do have a question.
You do have a question, yes?
Yes. It might be directed to Mike or Chris. Obviously, this need is for the Board of Health. That's the biggest need right now. I imagine any paperwork we want to use Board of Health to make sure that reimbursements happen correctly. But it makes sense to go on my inventory and register it because these have to be registered as trailers through our department. So I don't know how to handle that. Maybe you guys can weigh in on that.
Tom, I don't think it'll really matter, who we, whatever makes it easiest to register those vehicles. I mean, clearly the town of Dayton is taking ownership of those trailers, so I don't think it really matters.
Right. So, yeah. So maybe just word it the town of Dayton rather than a highway department.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I apologize for that first. Where are we going to store these units? I know we have space issues. That's why we still utilize the old police station. So when these items are in use, where will they be stored?
At the transfer station.
So there's adequate space for them?
Yes, they don't need to go inside. They can be outside.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion that we approve the discretionary spending request for a total of $27,050 even for 2 message boards to be purchased from ATS Equipment out of Rehoboth, Massachusetts, as presented.
Second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Selectman Hull? Aye. Selectman Stefan? Aye. The next item on the discretionary spend request is from the Board of Selectmen. Spreadsheet review $2,500. No ask the town administrator.
Yes.
Let the board know what this is about.
Thank you, Mr. Ferry. Sorry, I tried to get it in.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Sorry, Tom always has something to say. Tom, do you have anything to add? Oh, God.
No, just thank you and have a good night. I don't think there's anything else from me here.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a quote from the Abrahams Group in the amount of $2,500. And this is really basically a fail-safe for our budget spreadsheet. We're actually 3/4 of the way through our budget process, as you know now. We're working with the FinCom. In the meetings we've been having, and I know there have been some questions about the formulas. The lining up to the levy. Limiting capacity, and this is really at the beginning of really me being here. I just want to, have some confidence that all the formulas are right, so we can continue working forward. And the Abrahams Group has worked with Dayton in the past, actually. And this is something they do for communities on a regular basis. They go actually through the spreadsheet, they check the formulas, and make sure that all the tabs, and our budget consists of 76. Oh, you know, it's actually departmental tabs and they're making sure it all reconciles to the bottom line. Like again, oh, you know, like it's relatively short money for something that can have a major impact on the finances and it just, like it's good to do periodically, but where things are in transition, I thought it would actually be really helpful to the process going forward.
I guess my only question is, it seems like after you did the budget,
Mhm.
sort of recap with Town Laviolette at the last FinCom meeting on Tuesday at the beginning,
Yes.
they were satisfied. So I guess my question is, do we still think this is necessary?
Yes. Like an initial look by the Abrahams group, we talked about with the FinCom last night, making sure the document was cleaned up. Like, and in a very cursory look that the Abrahams group has already done for the spreadsheet. Like actually they have identified a few non-substantial items that should be actually cleaned up. They're not substantial. However, they do very, very minimally impact the bottom line. So we want to make sure those are cleaned up as we move forward. So yes, I do believe it's still helpful going forward.
I will make a motion that we approve the request as presented in the total of $2,500 to the Abrams Group for the, I don't know what to call it, consulting services
Yeah, consulting for spreadsheet review.
for spreadsheet.
I second.
Any further discussion? If not, those in favor say aye. Selectman Hall?
Aye.
Dr. Z, Chairman Chico says aye. Opposed? Abstentions? No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Public input, do we have any emails or any chat? Is there anybody in the public on Zoom that wishes to speak now? I'd like that to know. We will have public input again later in the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, can I have a quick suggestion? Do you mind, will you entertain motions to move out of order for the item 9A old business that's relevant to the town of
Kind of not going to stick around, but I
Okay.
do understand, well, as you know, how difficult it is. If you're able to look at the information and I'm not going to move to it. You should. No, I think a motion.
I will make a motion that we move item 9A and only 9A out of order.
Any discussion? If not, Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Aye, Chairman Chico is an aye. Mr. Chico.
No, really.
No, really?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So I'm requesting tonight 2 new town drop boxes. This was a request that originally came from the clerk's office before I started, so I kind of took the baton afterwards. And I agree with the original request. We're requesting it for a few reasons. I think it's really important that the clerk's office has separate mailboxes. Vote by mail is going to be the way of the future. There's legislation for permanent vote by mail, but even just absentee voting, that would be there forever. The current Dropbox is small, so I think having a larger one that can take future volume is important. I think it's also important so people can do business in a socially distanced way in the future. And in addition to that, I think it's important to have a separate box.
You're talking about the treasurer collector and their own house.
Oh, yes, thank you. So that way only election officials are touching the vote by mail applications. And also birth certificates, sometimes only the mom and the dad and the child can see it, and you know, the appropriate personnel. So those types of documents, it'd be nice for residents to know only town clerk officials are touching those documents. So my proposal would be one clearly lettered and distinguished by color as well, drop box for the clerk's office. And I don't know if you call it a general drop box or a treasurer collector drop box, but a second drop box, also clearly distinguished by color and lettered. And I think being on the other end of the phone now, I realize if someone called, I could say, yes, we're the blue box, and it says town clerk, and it says balance. And the other one could say, oh, it's a white box, and it says no balance. So that's the thought process. Just to wrap it up, because I don't want to drag on, we did do our homework. We talked to the building commissioner for his feedback, the highway department. We met with the town administrator, Michael Mullen, and Jim and the ADA. And we also talked to Chris about CARES funding, which is why we were hoping with the renovation of town hall that this would kind of go through under CARES and inside of the renovation. And lastly, I just want to say, when we did talk to Jim and Mike, and I don't like to speak for anyone, so like Jim Agia mentioned, we may be able to recycle that, the current drop box at Old Town Hall. So there'd be no waste, which is nice.
So that was part of the conversation yesterday. 2 new boxes going to go over next to the town hall, and they think it will be over them over here, so we have to go. And we would distinguish one for the clerk's office. Probably the treasurer collector. Let's see, what have any questions?
Yes, actually, do we in fact need 2 motions, one to approve it and 2 to pay for it?
I think we can make one motion to purchase these 2 boxes.
Like to approve
Approve the request. And were these monies mentioned?
I was just looking for that.
We know the cost of the.
I probably could have written that better once I heard Mr. Berry talk. He did a better job. I gave a price for each box, but it doesn't include shipping, so it's going to be a great price.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it's a town, I'm sure has an account with Granger, if that price may be cheaper. So maybe if it's possible to do a not to exceed price, I'm not sure. If that's possible.
And so we need 2, correct? We need to actually purchase 2?
We're asking to purchase 2 and make sure. And I like the different colors too. After a while, we'll be used to which one to pay the taxes and something else.
I didn't actually specify. So these will be reimbursable by the CARES Act, is that correct?
That's my understanding. I'm not sure if Chris is still here, but that was in the packet and I did run it by him. It's been a little
That is
while.
correct.
So
I'm going to try my best, and I will revise it if someone needs me to. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the town clerk's request to purchase the 2 new Courier boxes in blue from Granger as presented, not to exceed, for a total, not to exceed $2,000.
the color, I guess, we.
One was blue and I said,
I'm
one
sorry.
for one.
Karen, this is great. Do you mind striking the color from the motion?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mike,
Yes,
any questions?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mrs. Goulart.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Who can't you hear?
Is it me?
Nancy, you muted yourself.
You're muted, Nancy.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay. So, I had a conversation with Mary Hathaway today. She expects to be heading home tomorrow. Strictly from a management standpoint, somebody on the outside looking in and knowing what has gone on in the past, my first concern is Mary Hathaway has not been involved with any discussions about a box. She didn't know there were 2 boxes on the list. Now, concern about security for ballots, I understand that. I have a bigger concern about security for 4 times a year when tax money comes in the form of checks that ends up in the boxes. We have one mailbox at the post office. Mary has the key to that. So again, when ballots come in to the post office, Mary's in charge of picking up everything. And I know when it's election time, the post office would notify the former town clerk, hey, some more ballots came in, and a special trip would be made down there. You're going to put in 2 boxes. It is not going to keep the mail segregated and separated, because first of all, people are going to probably drop it in whatever box because they're going to look at it because they've already been trained to drop it in one box. There's also comments being made such as, we got to start sorting their mail for them now. And I had mentioned this before when this came up, when I talked to the new town clerk. I really think that as the new town clerk, Mr. Pacheco, and out of courtesy, if no other reason, should sit down with Mrs. Hathaway and the town administrator and talk about the operation of those 3 public functions: clerk, treasurer, collector. My impression was when they were going to be provided additional office space, it was going to do just that, provide office space. We weren't trying to segregate duties, but the question would be, when they were all crowded together on a Wednesday night, either the clerk came in or the treasurer collector came in. So how is coverage going to be provided? If in fact the town clerk's office, let's say one person's on vacation and another one's out sick, who's going to provide those services? Are you going to go back to the way it was? I think this all needs to be discussed so that the public understands what's going to happen.
You're off subject right now. Right now, we're talking about these boxes. I would like to continue with that. So is Mrs. Hathaway aware of?
I have talked to Mrs. Hathaway about it, yes, and also at that meeting, we did tell her she could listen into it further, which she didn't do, so she knows what's going on. She knew about it with Pam when she submitted it. I talked to her about it, and I would like to briefly just talk about one of Mrs. Goulart's points, if I can. If someone drops it off to town hall, they're trying to bypass the post office because they want to just make sure it's getting where it's intended. Post office a little slow lately, also, just really quickly, they need to be labeled in a way that says ballots or no ballots, and either general or treasurer collector and clerk. And that's my only comments.
I did just want to stress, I would assume, given I mean, it doesn't really involve town clerk people, but I would assume, just given the close relationship between the former town clerk and the former treasurer collector, they probably did. You had said this had started when Mrs. Madeira was still the clerk, so I assume that they would have discussed it.
So we had a second on that motion, right? Second, yes. Is there any further discussion? Actually, I do. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, would you consider waiting till Mrs. Hathaway returns and putting this on a future agenda?
It's my understanding that she's familiar with what's going on about the 2 boxes.
I talked to her shortly before this meeting. She was not aware. She has not met and discussed it with the town clerk. She told me that. I said, Mary, I don't want to create problems for you. I just want to know how you feel. I will ask if a meeting can be set up so that you have a chance to weigh in on it. She says, I didn't know I was getting a box. That's all I'm telling you. I'm just relating the information that I got tonight. That's the only thing I'm bringing up.
Well, we have a motion from second. All those in favor say aye. Selectman Hull? Aye. Dr. Z? And Ken Pacheco is aye. We had, as you know, we had a conversation yesterday with Mrs. Hathaway. She was on the phone, she's stuck someplace. We talked about all the divisions in the 2 departments. And I get the impression that she didn't want to necessarily participate in the discussion about the boxes because we were outside the building. So I'm satisfied with this.
I wouldn't see why she would be opposed to having a separate box, to be quite frank. And I agree, it's very important that the ballots be handled by one department. I get it. It's gonna take a while. People are gonna be putting it in the wrong box, but you're gonna label it properly. You and Mrs. Hathaway will come up with how we want these boxes labeled. And I think we're gonna be able to avoid a lot of that. So, I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad that the kids office, the fire department's gonna cover this.
May I make a request or some sort of, if you don't mind coordinating with the town administrator and Mrs. Kerman in the Board of Selectmen's office, so once the boxes are here, maybe we could send out an email and like just do our best to notify, maybe even coordinate with cable committee to have some kind of message on channel 9 on like the scroll. I'm not giving you guys more work, but channel 9 is a reliable source of information for people that may not be online. So I think we should do our best to get that message out so we don't have problems with sorting of mail or, you know, we can avoid it the best we can. So.
And that was a great idea.
Thanks.
No, I'm good. In regards to who will be authorized to have the keys, where Mark is an elected official, how is that determined when Ms. Hathaway has authorization for the keys? How is that determined as to who would have authorization?
I'm going to ask town, but I would think they're both the head of their departments. They're both elected. I would think that they would, and I assume that you can delegate to your assistant as well as Mrs. Hathaway.
It's just like she can sign for me almost.
Yeah. I don't expect you to always have to go outside and, you know, the mailbox. I'm sure on occasions you're going to just know your work habits. So I'm sure that answers your question.
Oh, it does, it does. I just wanted this to be recorded for the record. So if a problem should come up of, you know, unauthorized entry into the box, we do have a policy, some type.
I'm not sure we have a written policy. Do we have a written policy on this? Maybe.
So I think Mr. Hall raises a really good point, especially for the purposes of like actually like our annual audit as well. If we actually as we go forward with 2 mailboxes, if we memorialize that the town clerk has a key and control of that box under the control of his office, and the treasurer collector has the control and custody of the other box under her office. So any financial related issues for the purposes of our audit or frankly our financial controls and system, those are documented as being through her. So I think we could absolutely come up with that. Yes.
We're not going to be authorized to get a key. So,
do you know how long the shipping takes just in general?
It's said on that quote, it seems pretty quick, because this one here said expected to arrive next day. So I think it'll be
Wow,
pretty quick.
okay.
I know Mr. Mullen has a lot on his plate. I don't know, the coordinator, I'd be happy to do the first draft of the policy and submit it to Mr. Mullen. I know he's so busy.
Oh, no, good. Yeah,
It's just something short.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly who is authorized to access it.
Agreed.
I think that's great. That's a good point. We should have it done from the beginning of when they arrive, like, so everybody is clear on.
so could you have that by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public buildings are now open to the public. The Friends of the Dayton Public Library and the Dayton Lions Club, I'm a member, just for the record, I'm a member of the Dayton Lions Club, are doing a joint fundraiser called Small Town Big Heart. I'm sure you've seen those hot signs all over town. Please consider purchasing them. It's a great signal to our neighboring towns that we have a big heart.
Pick up your hot signs and show your love for Dayton. Suggested donation for the sign is $5. You can purchase the signs at the Dayton Public Library via curbside pickup during library hours. The Russo Spawn after May 1st spring fair at the Dayton Community Church, cash or check only. I'm also a member of the Dayton Historical Society. I'm an officer, I'm a treasurer. None of us get paid. The spring pot fundraiser for the Dayton Historical Society. Take and make home kits provided by the Russo Funds, 508-669-6988. Cost is $40. Pre-registration and prepayment is required pickup on May 8, 2021. So it's a great Mother's Day. The town of Dayton's food bank distribution will be held next on May 15, 2021, located at the Town Hall, 979 Somerset Avenue, low level as a drive-through. The rabies vaccination day will be held on Saturday, May 15th, from 3 to 4 p.m. at the Dayton Animal Shelter, 821 Fremont Street. The Board of Health has rescheduled annual all food item pickup to June 7th, 2021 to June 11th, 2021. Items must be out no later than 7 a.m. and you need to purchase tags from the Board of Health to put on your items that you're going to put out there. You can't just put items out, they won't come up. The town clerk's office would like to remind residents to please license their dogs. Massachusetts general law requires dog licenses for dogs 6 months of age or older. Contact the clerk's office at 508-669-5411. Option 2 with any questions. And it's my understanding that if you're 70 or older, it's free to license your dog. The following boards and committees have vacancies. The bylaw review committee, cemetery commission, conservation commission, Dayton Trails Committee, Finance Committee, Human Rights Committee, Land Use Committee, Superintendent of Pest Control, TIP Review Board, Cable Television Committee, Community Preservation Committee, Development and Industrial Committee, Leon School District Facilities Committee, Historical Commission, Industrial and Development Finance and Authority, Municipal Building Study Committee, Taxation Aid Committee, and Zoning Board of Public Health. Town Administrator reports. Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first update is actually on the speed in Center Street in the area of the Aggie School, but also the Somerset Ave intersection. At this point, I have had a conversation with the Chief of Police and the Highway Superintendent as well. What I would recommend, because the 138 portion, especially in the area of the Center Street and Somerset Ave intersection, that is a state road layout. So like in talking with everyone, the highway superintendent, the police chief, based on the comments from former Selectman Goulart 2 weeks ago, I do think a letter to MassDOT is appropriate. Like at this point, and I'd be happy to draft actually such a letter asking them to meet to discuss additional traffic controls in that area, especially with the school. And then based on that, in conversation with the police department, once we actually have those additional controls in place, then the police department can enforce those. So I'd be happy with your blessing and approval to write a letter to MassDOT District 5, asking them for a conversation about how we take those additional steps, and then going from there and work with them forward. So I'm not sure if Mr. Ferry, it doesn't look like he's on, but if there's any other questions or thoughts, but that's what I'd recommend at this point. See, I can write the letter knowing that everyone's behind it. Thank you. So I believe for the April 1st to 2nd, if you will remember, we were working on an expression of interest for the Commonwealth's new one-stop grant portal. The first priority would focus on zoning on the 138 corridor, in the County Street area, and then the zoning up along the Route 44 corridor in Dayton as well. The second priority would actually allow us to pursue funding for the replacement of the Muddy Cove. Hold on a second, I'm still learning the lingo. The Muddy Cove not the pond. No, the Muddy Cove, the Pleasant Street Bridge area. Muddy Cove, thank you, sorry about that. So that funding would come out of the small rural grant program. And then the third priority would be a feasibility analysis on the Muddy Cove Pond Dam. So outlined in the packet, you will see the response from the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. They believe that the first two priorities actually fit perfectly into the one-stop grant portal framework. So they're recommending that we continue on and pursuing those through the regular grant deadline, the first part of June. So that is good news. The last priority is more of the Office of Dam Safety / MVP program priority. So when they determined that that did not fit within the EOHED one-stop portal framework. So I wanted to provide an update on that and take any questions, but we can actually continue pursuing the first two priorities forward, which is very good news. Both are extremely important.
My question will be short.
Mhm.
Now I'm starting with me. My first question is just, so the three projects, or at least the two that look like they are eligible for their certain criteria,
Yes.
They will have different or the same deadline dates, because they're two different grants.
The same, because they're still going to be through the one-stop grant portal.
Okay, so that, okay, now I see how they do
Mhm.
Thank you for your report.
I do have one more thing, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay. So the MVP program action grant, you'll see on the following page in the packet, the MVP for FY22 funding round is now open, and it closes on the 7th of May. And I want to, which is a week and a half away, I want to have this conversation. I really want to thank the former town administrator, because I was talking with her about this early in the week, because the continuity and the knowledge base there is just incredible. And I was actually discussing with her that I was actually trying to pull this grant actually all together for next Friday. And she goes, and she asked if I talked to Anna Robinson from Preston O'Neill. So my first response was, who? And she explained who Arnold was, that he's been instrumental in all of our MVP work. So thankfully, I had a really good conversation with Mr. Robinson earlier today, and based actually on his recommendation and his knowledge of what the MVP grant, this grant round was really prioritizing. We had a conversation with Mr. Coonan from the Water District last week. We wanted to pursue actually additional water sources through that. And Mr. Robinson thought it was a great idea, but it was his recommendation that based on the state's priority right now, the state priority is really focused on environmental justice, resources and communities, and because we're not one, he didn't think he honestly said he didn't want us to take the effort to actually apply, because he didn't think there was any likelihood we would be awarded. So that was his recommendation, that we sit this grant round out, and I just wanted to share that with you. Originally, I was hoping to come here to get our agreement or consensus that the water priority should be a priority in this grant round. But after explaining in that discussion, he mentioned that, although noble, we should actually continue planning for that and deal with that issue, but that it wouldn't fit in this MVP grant round. I think we do have a chat, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, since we don't have a selectmen's report, can I just read something that the water district received? Is it shut? No, I'm sorry, you were still on.
So that is all I am, Mr. Chairman. I'm not reports on those issues, but I'm happy to take some questions.
Oh, it is on the agenda, I'm sorry. Nope, it's what we would go out of order. I didn't even see it, my apologies.
So I just have a brief report on the second report. I met Monday with the ADA coordinator and the chairman of the historical commission and the two young ladies that are doing the James Street dock next door. And we discussed different plans and different things that are going to have to happen. They're really motivated. They have a lot of plate in the commission. Some members of the Commission on Disability who have been delegated to work with them are meeting next Monday. We'll talk further about their plans and actually get it designed. So they're really excited. The kids are excited to go. They're going to begin doing some of the work in the fall, and they hope the next spring we'll be able to set the gardens up. It's not a community garden, just for the record. It's going to be whatever vegetables that we grow there will be for the food bank as well as prime time and Lincoln Village. So it's not like people are going to plant a tomato farm and take tomatoes home. They're going to weed them and plant, fertilize them, all that kind of good stuff. They'll all be organic. So I think it's just a great program.
Is that better, Mr. Woods?
I can hear you fine, Brett.
Okay.
And yesterday, we coordinated some people explained. ADA coordinator, Simone, myself, and building commissioner met yesterday to go over the renovations and the different things that need to be done to make sure that the ADA compliant. And the ADA coordinator, Catherine Pierre, as well as the building commissioner will be in contact with each other to make sure everything's properly done. But we've done some great renovations. That's some of your items that you're working for. And I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing over there. So that's my report.
I just wanted to read, it's not really something from the Board of Selectmen, but it is something that I know I was aware of, I know you were, Selectman Hull, and I know our town administrator was so directly coordinating with the water district on it. The water district posted several days ago on their Facebook page that they were honored to represent Dayton for being selected to receive an SRF loan from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the Main Street water main project. As you know, the quality of the road is not the best, to say the least. I mean, you live on that road, so I'm sure you know better than everyone here. However, the issue has always been that the water infrastructure is aging. It needs to be replaced before they would repave the road, or else they were just going to be constantly digging it up every time a water main burst or broke. And so this will be very instrumental in bringing that project to fruition. And they wrote that this loan program is highly sought after, while only a few are selected. Being selected also allows for the possibility for loan forgiveness through federal earmarks, which I know our town administrator was working with Congressman Auchincloss. Every freshman congressman is allowed a certain number of earmarks, and so he solicited them, and they worked with his office on hopefully getting this loan forgiven. And they just all the commissioners thank everyone in staff for being responsible. So I just wanted to say kudos to the water district and kudos to our office and your office, Mr. Administrator, for coordinating this. And I think it's still going to take a while, obviously, for everything, but it's getting there. So good work.
Mr. Chairman, I attended the last water district meeting. One of the very positive things that I heard out of that meeting is the taping coordinating their activities and keeping just with every and the DPW, that's what's going on. Developing a good working partnership on that street project.
That's important, that's a major project. Not important just because you live in that street, but it's a major. You don't want, you know, do the road and then put the water, the water and so on. So we skipped, I skipped a couple of items in the minutes questions before I went right to it. So we're going to go back to old business. Review discussing that fiscal year 21 employee vacation time update. Mr. Mullen, you provided us some information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the town accountant has been very involved in this as well, so I want to thank you, Mr. Laviolette, for your work on this as well. So the first actual introduction to this issue I had in Dayton was at the end of February when I logged on to a meeting and really began understanding the issue here. But I have dealt with the same issue in my prior role as well based on COVID. And over the past 2 months, we've been monitoring the trends, basically in our maximum liability, and also in the trends of what other cities and towns are doing to deal with the same issue. And thankfully, our liability, if we were to end the fiscal year today, just as an example, and if we were to shut down today, hypothetically, we would be responsible for $111,000, and I'm actually almost almost $112,000, and in vacation, the carryover if we were to entertain buying people out. And I've thought a lot about this, and everyone has been thinking a lot about this because of COVID, because of the fiscal discipline that we need to have right now as well with our budgets. And what I've seen and what actually other towns are doing, as we know, everyone made adjustments last year based on COVID in terms of buyouts, extending over, carrying over more than what had been allowed through any collective bargaining agreement or non-union personnel agreement prior to COVID. Last year, the town made adjustments, and this year, since I've basically come on board, we've been entertaining what and how the town should move forward with our employees in terms of addressing that for this year. What I'm recommending, and I've talked to union reps from a very limited amount of unions right now that we have in town, but I didn't want to advance any idea or conversation until I brought this up with the board. Is that if we were based on where we are with the FinCom and the year-over-year revenue issues we're having, we've to date had to downgrade our local receipt revenues by about $300,000 from FY21 going into FY22. So we're heading into FY22 as a town last year was challenging, but we knew that FY22 would be a challenging year, and it is already. So what I'm recommending is that unless there's a requirement actually prescribed in a collective bargaining agreement, that we do not do any buyouts this year. We follow the letter of the collective bargaining agreement in terms of any buyouts, if any buyout language if it's applicable, but we follow the letter in terms of a 2 week or 2 weeks worth of time and carry it over, because that's what the collective bargaining agreements outline, and we want to follow them. That being said, however, understanding this has continued to be a year and a challenge in terms of the pandemic for all. Understanding that we want to try to find a way to work and do right with our employees. What I would recommend the board consider is although actually not recommending any buyouts this year, that we do consider, we already have almost across the board a 2-week carryover language in our agreements. And one way to deal with this and the challenges that we've all faced with our employees is considering this actually as a transition year where we allow employees to carry over 3 weeks of vacation time. In that, what would actually be carried over and above the 2 weeks would need to be used by a certain date of town, a certain date depending on the needs of actually the department, the highway department, for example, this is their busy time. So maybe we actually extend the use it, requirement for the highway department to a date that may be different from the other units because this is their busy time. But we would actually come up with MOUs for all the unions. So anything we did to extend anything over and above the standard 2 weeks wouldn't be viewed as a precedent or a past practice. That's what I'm thinking now, but I just wanted to bring it forward to the board, for thoughts and input, and then we could proceed further with an MOU conversation with the unions or something to that extent, but I didn't want to go too far down the road without actually bringing it forward.
So my question is, why would you put what you're going to use the time? I think it should be used in the next fiscal year.
Yes.
So why would we say, let's do it like December 31st, March 31st, yes, March 31st.
Yep. Yep. No, Woody?
No, he's muted.
Okay.
And then we use that extra time that we're given. We're allowing them to carry over.
Yes.
We have to use that the next fiscal year. If the board has any questions, that would be my concern. Why would we limit it to that date, just that fiscal year? So
as long as it's used in FY22, we're good. Yep. Okay.
My thought is, before I even have an opinion, I really think you need to talk to all the department heads because I think staffing will be a nightmare.
Yes.
If you allow that. I definitely don't support the MOU thing. That's definitely a nightmare. I have spoke to selectmen and town administrators in other towns. Do you know what they're doing for their employees and even what they did last year? They didn't do anything.
I agree.
They fell back on the CBA. We were very generous. So this year, my thought is not hearing anything from the department heads yet. I'm likely just to say, follow the CBA.
Yep.
I think we've been very gracious. I don't think anyone can say we weren't fair or went above and beyond last fiscal year. So those are my thoughts.
No. My concern, if we adopt the cost, or you suggested that some people really have a lot of hours vacation, so I think it would be tough for them to, if they take it by the end of this fiscal year, and just carry over 2 weeks. Some of the people who on vacation, I think it might interfere with some of the different departments.
It could have. That's why we should probably.
What about?
I feel more comfortable if Mr. Mullen had more discussions with the department head and with the union representation.
Okay.
And then come back with something more concrete to present to us.
I'd be happy to do that. Like I see and I understand the points across, across the board. I am familiar with communities who have done nothing at all. What the CBA outlines, the CBIE outlines, and that's it. And there's a lot to be said for that as well. In terms of an MOU, I was just thinking an MOU, just really to memorialize that if we did go over and above the CBA, that wouldn't establish any type of precedent. So we've been more, like, we can memorialize that and have agreement, so we don't have this issue ever again, and we can just move forward beyond it. But I do understand, I mean, this is, yeah, there are 5 sides to thinking of this issue, all in addressing it, but I'm happy to continue the conversations with department heads and with the unions as well.
So, we'll have to wait till our next meeting, May 12th, and further discuss this. So what you're suggesting is, if we don't do anything, they're obligated to take their vacation time. They can carry over 2 weeks, but that's it. And if you don't take vacation time, you're gonna lose it, and it doesn't mean the town's gonna pay you. Am I correct?
That's exactly, and the only reason I even say that is not because I don't see the merit in allowing people to carry over. I think it could be a double-edged sword. You could be, if everyone has to use it, now they're in a situation where you might have a staffing issue.
Yep.
If you allow them to take, then you're pushing the staffing issue into the next year, but maybe you could spread it out. I just think we made a concession last year. And so when we talk about a precedent, that this would be the second. So the precedent has already happened, and now we're doing another thing outside of this meeting again. So that's the only reason I mentioned this, but I do agree. And I definitely think that we need to consult the department heads. And I suggest, as always, some department heads may have different views or different staffing needs.
Yes.
That they may be impacted differently by those decisions. So I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say.
Oh, absolutely. But just really to begin, like actually setting the expectation for employees. Number one, I think the overall message is we want and encourage our employees to be using their time. Number two, I think I'm hearing like across the board, just for planning purposes, that like we really aren't going to be entertaining any type of buyout provision this fiscal year. No, everyone collectively, so we can set expectations. Okay. Yep. Yeah, like unless it's already required in the CBA.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Review, next item on the whole business is C, review 2019 fiscal year 22 budget update.
So thankfully, Mr. Chair, I mean, I included that as a placeholder just in the event that there is anything actually to address, but because the FinCom process is underway, I'd recommend just letting that process actually continue moving forward for the time being.
Stay where our original position was, or change our position. Based on your recommendations. So we will decide as will become up again. New business.
Oh, can I ask you one question about that?
Is that the question I want to ask?
It's about that, what you just said about that. Before we move on, so we don't plan as a board to take any vote at tomorrow's meeting. We're gonna hold it for, if we change our mind on something, we'll wait till May 12th at our meeting.
Okay, yes, but we are we not having a meeting tomorrow, or something earlier? We talked about that.
Yes, it's 6 o'clock. The agenda has been set. Did Ms. Cohen send anything out?
Yeah. I didn't see it.
Okay. Okay.
But there is an item or two that we're going to be voting on before the FinCom.
So yes, I apologize for that. Yes, it's 6 o'clock meeting before the FinCom 6:30 meeting. Yeah, yes. So. Yes. Yes. Yes.
New business. First of all, we received a letter. Dear Michael, and wanted to formally notify you of my resignation from my position as town council for the town of Title. I was recently offered an opportunity with the town of Rainham and have decided to take that offer. My nearly 2 years in the town of Title has been some of the best of my life. I will miss my job and the incredible people I have had the pleasure of working with throughout my tenure. I cannot thank you, the entire staff, the board of selectmen, and the finance committee enough for all the opportunities and experiences that you have provided me during my time with the town. I appreciate your support and understanding. I wish you and the entire staff, board of selectmen, and finance committee all the very best. Please let me know if I can be of any assistance during the last few weeks of my time here. And sign Chris Ryan. Next, Chris. I will entertain a motion to accept the second. Any discussion?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Chris, as I will
Yes,
now
sir.
call you. No, I'm just kidding. Mr. Laviola, wow, what a crazy last year it was together. I learned a lot. I'm not going to get emotional. I learned a lot from you. I think we learned a lot together on like how the budget process is, especially when we didn't have a town administrator to kind of guide things. But we got through it. We're a team. I will certainly miss just bothering you, just coming into your office and just, you know, just talking about everything under the sun. Most of it work related. But in all seriousness, I will take what we learned together and I will apply those lessons as we continue. And I just really appreciate the service that you gave us. And I can honestly say that had you not been here, after our former town administrator left, that we wouldn't have done anything on the budget. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I hope that you'll keep it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure working with you as interim town administrator. Glad that I could take you to school there, so to speak, Doctor. And I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I thank you for the service of the town. I also wish you the best in the town of Rainham. And one of the things that I appreciate is the fact that you're going to help with the transition for the new assistant town administrator. Hopefully, there'll be many questions, I'm sure, that the town accountant will have. So I thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Did you already make a motion? Second. Those in favor say aye. Selectman Hunt?
Aye.
Selectman Segravas? Aye. And Chairman Chico says aye. With regret.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item is to review, discuss, and act on the town common staff description motion. So this, my understanding, this is the same posting that we did a couple of years ago, so it's the same description of the job.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions on that post description and posting? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the town accountant's job description and posting as prepared in our packet this evening.
There's a second. Second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Selectman Hunt? Aye. Selectman Segravas? Aye. Chairman Chico says aye. It passes unanimously. The next item is interim consultant for accounting department. Now, this one.
I thought we did something on that already.
Yes, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
On that, we do have a few options, thankfully. As I outlined, actually in the email that I sent to the town administrator for the town of Rainham, the good news is we're going to actually have Mr. Laviolette actually working with us in some capacity through the end of the fiscal year right now. The question is actually closing out the fiscal year after July 1st. Oh, you know, like in Chris actually had volunteered that if he does have to work a week's worth of hours in Rainham, he'd come back and help on off hours and off time. Oh, and I do want to thank Mr. Laviolette for that, as Mr. Hall did as well. But at this point, I believe, and I don't want to be too hopeful here, but based on that, so our new assistant town accountant starting this coming Monday, Lisa, the board at its last meeting did approve the services of the former assistant town accountant through the end of March, so for 6 hours a week. So, and I did talk with our former assistant town accountant as well. And once we really get into the transition here, I do know from the former assistant town accountant, Miss McCarron, that she would be willing to actually like extend and increase those hours as well. So we have more of a transition. But I just wanted to actually share that information with you, which I think is really good news, because at this point we won't have to go outside and hire some very high priced consulting firm. We should be able to absorb a lot of this. Additionally, hopefully with the board's approval of the job description and posting tonight, we can actually have the job posted on MMA by the end of this week. So that is exciting. So it's not even the first part of May yet. So ideally, if we start the process, actually now the job application process will end, so I'd say conservatively by the beginning of June. Then we can interview the first part of June, and hopefully I'm counting any luck I have, we should be able to have somebody in place if all goes well by mid-July, the beginning of August, which would be very good. Yeah, she's willing to help out, and we just either at the May 12th meeting or at a subsequent meeting, we just have to update the board's motion to increase those hours while also making sure we remain actually under the 960 cap. No, I just wanted to provide an update that we do have a plan. So if all goes according to that plan, we should be in pretty good shape. Are there any questions?
The only question I have has to do with the amount of acquisition.
Mhm.
Negotiated salary range.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Mr. Hall. There is, based on the current town accountant's contract, there is a figure actually already in the budget that is based on the contractual terms of the current town accountant's employment contract. For a range, like a hiring range, we have a few options. We could have a discussion with the FinCom about either putting additional funding in the accounting department budget, or if we do hire with a range that is actually over and above where the town accountant is now, we could go back for reserve funding as well. To the FinCom, we could have that conversation with the FinCom as well, based on the board, how the board might want to proceed in terms of posting as well, like a range of which we're looking to hire a new town accountant.
You can also carry the next individual based on their experience. It's similar to, I know it's elected versus appointed, it's similar to when Mrs. Madeira retired as town clerk and Mr. Pacheco was appointed to the town clerk. He had left his team, so clearly the decision from the board was not to pay. So if we were to end up really liking the candidate and hiring them, but they were not, didn't have, I don't know, the degree of experience that Mr. Laviolette had, for example, then we could offer that less than there's probably an appropriate range to answer your question, but I think there is some flexibility and we can make it the salary commensurate with whatever criteria we want to emphasize in terms of like for that particular example.
Now, where time is of the essence. How would we go about coming up with one range and two criteria for adjustment?
That's a really good point, and I wanted to make a third point. If I may, that we need to keep in mind, if we could keep track of all these points. I think there was an issue when we hired the town clerk, for example, and I'm only bringing this up because it was recent, where feedback that I received from one of the applicants at that time was it would have been more helpful if we had posted a salary range with that job posting. I think we may want to, I don't know if this is your point, but if I think we need to have some kind of a range, and I don't know if we want to decide that tonight or on like May 12th, but that would
I
be.
think it's gonna be posted pretty soon, right? So I think we probably need to resolve that, the range anyway.
So to try to thread the needle here. So I have one suggestion, like in the job description and in the job posting, we could post or actually include language that specifies what the FY22 rate of pay would have been for the current incumbent. That would have been $83,000. So we can word it to some degree that it says, proposed FY22 pay is for FY22. Like it's $83,000. Salary for the new town accountant, or to some actually wording to that extent, would be based on qualifications and experience. So at least at the outset, they see what kind of our starting point and what kind of our market is in Dayton. Then they can see what we have, what we've been paying, what we've been able to pay, and then they can make a determination at that point whether to apply. And at that point, it would be up to them to make a case why they might need actually additional salary or less of a salary or anything along those lines. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think having that sort of clarity.
Yes, I agree.
Will allow us to get a range of people.
Yes.
You'll get people who, you always get people who like aren't qualified, they just apply. But getting people who maybe are like new in that profession, but also we still want to get people who are like really experienced in that. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So that's okay with me. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Well, I think that's a valid point. We have to have a pretty good idea of what the salary is going to be.
Yep.
Some people may not apply because they don't like the salaries. Some others will apply, they don't qualify. So if we negotiate, if we decide to hire somebody, then Mr. Mullins discussed with them the contract, and is it agreement with the board that the figure be higher, not saying it's going to be, but the figure be higher. Can we then, and it's after June 7th, we can then address this at the special town meeting. Because right now we're going with the salary that would have been Chris's from July 1st.
So yes, in full transparency, I think when we have the conversation with the FinCom, we can share with them that this is our vision forward, and I think they'd understand that.
Because they don't like to set
Yep. So yeah, like, and they always have, I mean, we all have the discretions to budget in an additional reserve if needed as well. But I mean, yeah, if we have the conversation with them at this point, then we can all be on the same page.
Good point.
We discussed the market points on Friday. It was already left.
this is when you do it. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint Tom Berry to the Joint Transportation Company Group.
I'm sorry.
Any discussion, if not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Back to Sue. Review, discuss, and act on appointment of Mike Mullen with Joint Transportation Planning Group alternate.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mike Mullen as the Joint Transportation Planning Group alternate.
For a second.
I will second.
All those in favor say aye. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Campuchico is aye. So I'm impressed that you made a motion to Selectman Hull. That'll be months before they.
Oh, we only think I would do a year.
Yes. I'm impressed that you, I always want to make sure it's worded correctly, and in fact, this is cool.
We have our attorney here.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that.
We always kind of ratify here. The next item is review, discuss, and act upon the Glen Coast and Betty Moore District Board of Trustees. First of all, I'm sure that you'd be interested in this.
I'd be honored. I attended one of the meetings. I look forward to working with them.
Thank you. For wanting to do this. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint Leonard Holt to the Dayton Water District Board of Trustees.
I will step down and second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Selectman Hull? Aye. Selectman Sparta?
Aye.
And Campuchico is an aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Review, discussion, action, and board second appointment of capital outlay committee. So my understanding is that I was appointed at the last meeting as a member of the capital outlay committee. You cannot be, or selected to be a member of the capital outlay committee, but I believe I can be the liaison person. Is that correct, Mr. Mullen?
Yes.
So I still have an interest in it. I attend the meetings and I have an interest in it. But I won't be a voting member. I'll just be reporting back to the board.
Which I think is really good because we have a lot of capital needs in the
Oh,
future.
yes.
I do have a, can I ask a question? So if we had appointed you,
Mhm.
I think the way the bylaw reads is we have to have someone that votes. So what is who will we, do we have an applicant or?
So yes, my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen is that you would solicit applicants for the Board of Selectmen to consider for appointing to one of the at-large positions.
And they still met tonight. So this is in past time?
No, if you have four, we have members already.
Yeah, very introductory kickoff meeting today. So we do have time because the next meeting of the group is scheduled for late June. So there's time to basically solicit applicants and then, for the board to consider those applicants for appointment.
Can I make a motion
So we have to make a motion to take the out of the members. We voted.
Yes.
the member.
I would
So I would ask for a motion to,
res-
rescind my appointment.
Mr. Chairman, if you're entertaining motion, I make a motion that we rescind the appointment of Kenneth Chico as a voting member to the Capital Outlay Committee.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Selectman Zarakis?
Aye.
Campuchico is an aye. I'll entertain a motion to appoint Campuchico as the liaison person for the capital outlay committee.
So moved.
For a second? Second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Selectman Zarakis?
Aye.
And Campuchico is an aye. Review, discuss, and act on the items 3 through 6 report.
Yes, it's in your packet as well, Mr. Chair. So, just as an overview, the town was recently notified and recently heard that if there is a project actually ongoing on Winthrop Street in Taunton
in the city of Taunton, that is right, on the Dayton line is, like in the abutters to the project actually include a number of stakeholders and residents in the town of Dayton, including the water district, who were never notified that they were in a butter and that the project was going on. Upon information that the town received from the conservation agent, we were, it was recommended to us that if the town had an issue with the way that this project had moved forward, with no Dayton stakeholders or abutters being notified, that we should actually contact DEP immediately, which is what we did. As a result of contacting DEP, I followed up with the regional director's office twice, and we have not to date received any response. At this point, we do know that there are a number of impacts to the Segregated River that have not been considered, that we believe. There are potential impacts to our aquifers out into the water district that the water district has not been notified or had the ability to consider, and there are residents who haven't had the chance to weigh in either. So at this point, we have not heard from DEP. I did hear from the conservation agent earlier this evening that the project is still going in full swing, the construction portion of it, and nothing is happening as a result of the letter that I sent last Thursday. So the question before the board is, does the board and does the town want to move forward and request additional relief, perhaps in the form of an injunction based on the fact that there are administrative and technical parts of this project that have not been followed in terms of processes. I did have a follow-up conversation with our council this afternoon, and based on the fact that our council also represents the city of Taunton, they can't actually be involved in this matter at all. So there are three firms. One is attorney Manganiello, who we could reach out to for guidance. There is attorney Chris Petrini, who the town reached out to before. So attorney Petrini is, he works out of Framingham, and he's been involved in a case actually with the Board of Selectmen. So, and then we also have a relationship with me, Tolman and Costa, in other land use areas. So if the board is so inclined, I'm happy to reach out to explore additional, additional opportunities that we as a town could hopefully achieve relief for our town, for our residents in the water district. But before I did anything further, I just wanted to have a conversation and seek your input.
Discussion that you want to take and how they want to proceed. Should we proceed separately or joint action?
So we met internally with Mr. Coonan last week and recommended that the water district, as in a butter, also take separate actions.
I think that makes sense. They're a separate entity, but I think the fact that we're on the same page with them, I think is the point. So it's important.
I think you are pursuing. Do we get the attorney or do we let the town administrator?
Your suggestion was me, Town, and Costa?
Let's do action.
So yeah, there are three. So I know Attorney Manganiello, he's a local Taunton attorney, who's more familiar or could be more familiar with the region. We've worked with Attorney Petrini before. And as we also know, the town also has a relationship, another land use issues with Mead, Kellerman and Costa, as well. Yeah, I think their local headquarters is in Millis, I believe, but I know, the, Attorney Jay Kellerman does work with the planning board. So an attorney Kate Federoff has also done work with the planning board and with the town on the marijuana overlay district stuff as well. So I do know former Selectman Goulart was involved in the conversation last week as well, from the Stormwater Committee. So I'm not sure if there's any additional thoughts.
My question is, did you ever speak to gay and gay law officers about who they might recommend, since they can't be involved? Do they have some sort of land use?
So their the land use council, who could actually be ideal, is Attorney Mitchell, but she's affiliated with Gay and Gay. Yes, but because she has an affiliation with Gay and Gay, there's a conflict there as well. So I did speak with Attorney Costa about each of the firms that I just outlined, and he didn't have any problem. Not that he is saying this because he's recused himself, but he's familiar with all of them.
Yeah, she's worked for years.
She did really good. She gave us some with different criteria for green communities. I think they're really good.
So as I understand, Attorney Mead is no longer.
It's just
No, I'm sorry, there was a separation, but I forget the dynamic. But Mead, Kellerman and Costa does work for the town presently, and I know Attorney Kellerman and Attorney Federoff has worked for the town.
I have not had experience with
I was still with probably with the former attorney's office, right? Everything fine, but there was one thing you mentioned in town. I think it might be too close to the issue. I'm a little concerned about that.
Okay.
So,
That's fair.
someone wants to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that for the issue presented before us regarding the notice of intent and the request for a cease and desist from the Department of Environmental Protection, that we enlist the services for this particular issue of Mead, the law offices of Mead, Kellerman and Costa, or whatever their name is currently.
Is there a second?
Second.
So just before we vote on this, we're all in favor of pursuing this. I think it's a very important issue that they would know. Yes. The residents of Brighton, the water district, that's very important. So, any discussion? Oh, sorry.
So to that point, Mr. Chairman, just for planning purposes, because time is of the essence here with regards to timing. So in the event that the attorney we speak with, or any attorney we speak with, recommends an injunctive relief path, does the board want to authorize up until that path at this point, or would you like to have the attorney actually come back in executive session to discuss that further before anything is done?
We tried to reach out to these people, is that correct?
Yeah, to DEP. They have not gotten, we have received a response that they've received our letter. Like my letter, I shall say, and we have not heard anything else. Okay.
This is a serious violation of the rights of our residents. Should that be part of the motion then, or do you want some?
Just for authorization, yes, if that is possible, just so we have that on record, so if anything comes out of it. Yep. Perfect.
So on the motion is to. All those in favor, say aye, after this office. And she votes also tonight. The second issue regarding it may be necessary to file an injunction. Entertain a motion in that.
So moved. If we just have,
Yeah, authorize the town administrator and town council to take any and all appropriate steps. Okay.
Next item is the discuss underground storage permits renewal. The board of selectmen received a letter from executive assistant John Brady. On this letter, I respectfully request that the board of selectmen review and approve our FP2 permits for underground storage tanks in the town. This come up, somebody made a complaint in the past that we didn't read the names of.
We did list them.
Yeah, so I read those.
and just to clarify, it wasn't an actual violation, it's just you go above and beyond. Someone doesn't have to read the packet to figure out who's gonna figure it.
Mr. Shiba, do we have to take these separately or can we do them all?
That's, I mentioned, but I think you can do it all.
I believe you can vote as stated in the.
So I read the letter again. I just let I respectfully request that the board of selectmen review and approve the following FP2 permits underground storage tanks in the town site. Edward Reese, Reese's Gas Station, 556 Somerset Avenue, Dayton, Mass. Town Club, 2125 Water Street, Dayton, Mass. Jeanette Hotel, Value Gas at 1866 County Street, Dayton, Mass. In Blue Copy Hotel, HCKL Dayton LLC, Information Private Street, Dayton, Mass. All inspections of the above premises have been secured by the Dayton Fire Department and approved for no entry consideration is ready. So I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve permits for underground storage tanks in the town of Dayton. For Edward Reese, Reese's Gas Station, 556 Somerset Avenue, Dayton. Yacht Club, 2125 Water Street, Dayton, Mass. Niche Hotel, Value Gas, 1866 County Street, Dayton, Mass. Kuchabi Hotel, HTKL Dayton LLC, 1995 Winford Street, Dayton, Mass.
Discussion. If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye.
I will note that I felt that selectman called pronunciation was probably more spot on. But just an observation.
So, it's my understanding, we're not, are we acting on this? No.
No.
Should I have, Mrs. Goulart speak on this, because I know she's been involved?
Yes, against Yeah, Mrs. Goulat has continued to be very helpful in this. So, Mrs. Goulat?
Yeah,
Yes.
On the AstraZeneca donation,
Phase one. Selectman,
I can't hear you.
can you hear me, Nancy?
can you hear me now?
Yeah, the person I can hear the best is Mr. Mullen. What's the question?
How's that? Is that better?
Can you hear
Yes.
me, Nancy?
Yeah,
Town Administrator Mullen and Chairman Pacheco are asking, I know we're probably not going to vote on the AstraZeneca land donation phase one, but you've been instrumental in it. Do you mind summarizing or just
Oh,
presenting it a little bit?
so the last time the three of us talked about this, you instructed me to pursue the three pieces of property on the north side of Main Street, because the original donation agreement that came to us included the dam and the pond and all of that. And we know that there has to be a serious study made of the dam, and we're trying to get grant money to do that. So the dam and the pond are sitting on the table at this point. So AstraZeneca agreed, Mr. Elmendorf agreed that those three lots could be separated from the main agreement. And so he sent through a draft gift agreement. One of the conditions in that agreement is they require a phase one study. And that's the initial review of everything. It does not include digging and sampling, because there's another clause in the agreement that says there can be no digging or any of that, just like the previous work that they did for us at the dam when they found everything was okay. So, so the next step is we got in touch with George Naslis at Weston and Sampson, because he's the engineer that did the study on the dam property and did the testing and all that. And I believe he got back to Mr. Mullen with a quotation on what a phase one would cost to have it done. Now, we've told George Naslis that we're going to put this on the warrant for acceptance as a gift at town meeting, if in fact we can get the phase one done in time, and assuming that the phase one comes back okay. If it can't be done in the short time period, it would come up at the next town meeting, probably in the fall. But we thought it's worth a shot. If we don't have the phase one testing information, it could just be tabled and we'll let the voters know it's going to go to the next meeting. But fingers crossed, if the phase one comes back okay, they're ready to move ahead and give us those three lots, which would connect the town of Dayton from the land we bought on Brook Street, with the western part of the river, all the way down to Main Street, and it would be town-owned land. So it'd be great for trails. Oh, one other restriction is it must be open space and recreation. It can never be developed. It can never be built on. So I told him that's exactly what we're looking at.
So yes, what I would ask Mr. Chair, if the board can approve, actually discretionary spending like up to $4,000 for phase one testing. We have a current quote from Weston and Sampson, as Ms. School mentioned, so in the amount of $3,500. So when we're meeting with George on Friday afternoon to just make sure, that framework of what we need to do is included in that phase one. So just so we have a little bit of wiggle room if we need it. $4,000 from the Board of Selectmen Professional and Technical in the current fiscal year.
One other requirement, Mr. Chairman, one other requirement in the proposed agreement, the land is currently zoned residential. So of course, AstraZeneca says, we want the zoning changed. And we thought, well, there's another roadblock to getting this to town meeting. But Attorney Costa said that the article on the town meeting warrant could specifically state that it is for recreational and open space use only, and those are the terms of acceptance of the gift. So we don't have to go through that whole zoning change process that you would normally go through. So that's another shortcut.
You think about this, where it's being designated for recreation and open space. Are there any other funding sources available to us to gather that money?
I don't know of any, but I,
The $4,000 Selectman Paul?
Yeah. I'm thinking of,
So like ideally, we might have a technical assistance grant that we could apply for, but because time is of the essence, we like to actually hopefully make sure we have everything in place for town meeting. We do have that funding. That funding is a fairly limited amount of funding, but I would recommend that we use the professional technical from the board of selectmen budget.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Part of this, and first I want to thank you, Selectman Goulart, for your work on this. I know the Board of Selectmen, I feel like we've been talking about this together as colleagues since maybe 2017. So it's been a long road.
Yeah.
But you have helped us get down that road. And so I want to thank you for that. I guess my point to Selectman Hull's point about the $4,000 is my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Selectman Goulart, there were other parcels that they were interested in possibly donating to the town of Dayton. And so if those parcels are considered at a later date, then we can plan to, for those specific parcels, if studies are needed, then we will have time to plan
No,
for some sort of.
Dr. Z, no, the other parcels are the dam and the pond.
Okay,
And
that's right. There
they've
were
all
4.
been tested, phase 1 and 2, they're fine. What we want, the last discussion I had with you and Mr. Pacheco was that, and what I talked to Bill Napolitano trying to get a grant for, we would like an engineering study of the dam done that would tell us exactly what needs to be done to raise it to the next level. It's rated fair. So we would like to get it to whatever the next level is. What has to be done? How much is it going to cost? Is AstraZeneca, and by the way, Charles has not said no. How much money is AstraZeneca willing to put in the pot to handle the repairs or whatever? And an estimate from an engineering firm on what it will cost to maintain that property if and when the town of Dayton accepts it once repairs and everything else are brought up to speed. So we don't have to do any more testing there, but we're now trying to get grant money to get the study done because we figure that's going to be expensive. So that's why you and Mr. Pacheco said, let's separate the 3 lots and let's see if we can get those. So that's what we're trying to do tonight.
Selectman Goulart, regarding the, I'm sorry, it's such a habit after 5 years, Nancy.
That's okay.
Not an assessor. After, so Town Administrator Mullen, I'm trying to tie 2 points here. I don't think we're eligible under one stop for any funding sources for that study you're talking about. However, do we know of any outside of that program that we may be eligible for? Is there any like glimmer of hope?
Are you
for the
talking about,
feasibility study?
are you talking about the dam project?
Yeah.
What Mr. Napolitano said, because we included that in that 3-town thing I've been working on with Somerset and Swansea. And he felt that that had a better chance because there is funding for hazard mitigation, and that's how we submitted it, was hazard mitigation. We didn't submit it as we'd like to have it tested because we want to get this gift. We said that we considered it a hazard and we ranked it in the top 5 that we had. So that's the route we're working on with Serpent.
I also wanted to just say very briefly, if
Is
it's
this related to
I'm sorry.
the actual issue that we're talking about?
Yes.
The dam.
Yes, absolutely. I did just want to ask Town Administrator Mullen, if we approve the $4,000 from the professional and technical, do we know estimates how much would be left in that account? I know we're towards the end of the fiscal year, but I did just want to ask that question.
Yeah, no, roughly speaking, after the $2,500 as well that was approved earlier this evening, I want to say in the $67,000 range would be left over remaining.
Oh, okay. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the spending of up to $4,000 for phase 1 testing from the Board of Selectmen's professional and technical account, as outlined in the documents in our packet.
I second.
Is that motion sufficient?
Yes.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye. Selectman Hull? Aye. Selectman Zabathis?
Aye.
And Patrick is an aye. Next item is review, discuss, and act on surface annual assessment. It's my understanding that the assessment for the town will be $1,394.52. Is that correct?
So yes, it is, Mr. Chairman. Like, and honestly, I would recommend a no action because we're planning on funding that through the fiscal year 22 operating budget anyways.
We can do no action.
I just like the figure only because they went like 2010 population, not 2020.
Does that, well, that might be in our benefit.
It is an answer, but, so we'll take no action. That's how we
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have in the packet and then Ms. Brady, I want to thank her for the spreadsheet she put together. Oh, actually earlier today, really outlining the 30 special warrant articles for the annual town meeting, and then the 3 warrant articles for the special town meeting. Just really starting, I think, try to, if it's okay, give a quick overview of what they are with a few recommendations to move forward to FinCom. But largely speaking, articles 1 through 14 on the annual town meeting draft warrant. Those more or less are perfunctory articles would be setting the budget, salaries of elected officials, the acceptance of Chapter 90 funding. But in addition to that, Article 14 is the article actually making the Community Preservation Act appropriations based on revenues. Article 15 is a $25,000 recommendation from the CPC to fund the historical survey, of which once that funding is upfronted, half of that money will come back to the town, which is great. Article 16 is a lease purchase payment. The first of actually 7 for a new fire engine. You'll see the total cost of the fire engine is just almost $692,000. We don't have the ability to fund that upfront this year, so the fire chief is proposing like a 7-year lease to purchase option, of which like the annual rate on that is $108,000. You'll see Article 17.
So can I just go back to Article 16?
Yeah.
So that's what option to buy. So if we make those 7 years, those lease payments, we actually own the.
Yes, exactly. It's a lease to purchase. So Article 17 is the proposed purchase of a fully equipped police vehicle in the amount of $62,000. Article 18.
Can I ask you a question about that? No, it's okay. No need to apologize. Just before we move on, I didn't, I'm scanning the entire thing. I didn't see the article for the police cruiser revolving fund. Is that not being brought back for the annual?
So it has not been resubmitted by the police department.
Thank you.
So Article 17 would fully fund a fully equipped police vehicle. Article 18 proposed by the highway department, it proposes $100,000 for a new forestry truck. Article 19 is $122,000 being proposed for a utility tractor with a 21-inch boom. Article 20, based on the conversation with FinCom, is actually the second year of the lease to purchase payment for the street sweeper in the amount of $50,000. Article 21 is a feasibility study that's been proposed by the Trails Committee in the amount of $30,000 for the Sweet Snow Trail System area. Article 22 is the wage and classification study for the clerical union in the amount of $9,000 that's been discussed. Article number 3 is the deferred article from the last special town meeting in the amount of $90,000 for the town hall renovations. On the second phase, and I can get the recommendations in a moment. Article 24, basically a reappropriation of of an article from the special town meeting in 2017 for the Complete Street program to fund easements and other takings for complete streets in the, I believe, in the amount of almost $119,000, or the $119,000 is what is actually remaining, in that special article balance. The planning board is proposing to amend the zoning bylaws dealing with the definitions of marijuana cultivators and marijuana product manufacturers. As Mrs. Goulart mentioned earlier, through the FinCom last evening, that there are placeholder private agreements for the two solar projects that are in the permitting phase right now, that we wanted to make sure we met the town meeting warrant article deadline. There's been a lot of discussion that we've already had with the FinCom about the proposed development projects that are being proposed in future ones as well. And so together with the FinCom, actually with the conservation agent, her and I worked because of timing issues. We're proposing a conservation bylaw change that takes the fee structure out of the bylaw, and will make the fee structure subject to regulation, which would allow the town more flexibility to deal with those and to have peer review done on the projects that are being submitted and brought forward. And then the ACO has a proposed zoning bylaw, which would actually replace the definition of kennel residential in the zoning bylaws as well. Generally speaking, before I get to initial recommendations, does anyone have any questions on any of the articles that are written?
What is there a landmark or something that someone can give me regarding Article 24? What is that parcel?
Article 24 is not a landmark. As I understand it, when the town started going for complete streets funding.
Mhm.
So we as the town needed to be prepared to, so with our local share of funding, to, to basically, so for funding to take any easements, you have to compensate any residents, any other parties, for any infringements or easements, infringements on properties. Get $118,000 was either appropriated or left over from that purpose. So at this point, we have almost actually completed our complete streets funding. We have actually about $33,000 left. Can actually allowable project costs that Mr. Terry and I have discussed, and we have been able to make it as a town through the first, I want to say 4 or 5 complete street priorities using that funding. So I really want to thank Mr. Terry for that. So this basically would reappropriate the remaining complete streets funding to fund as proposed the priorities that were submitted as part of the shared streets grant.
So my literal question is, do we have like a map of the lots? I just want to see where they are. And I know, I'm just like, no, I'm sorry. You're like, I don't know, I don't have it. Does someone have a map? I just want to see where these lots are. Like, not tonight, just. Okay, there is a map. Okay, thank you.
So has this money been appropriated already then? It says reappropriated.
Yeah, so it was appropriated in 2017 for the purpose of complete streets. So what actually is being proposed is a change in purpose for that funding. So if we were to try to fund so what we're calling our shared streets priorities, which is modeled off of the grant application which we submitted to the state for the shared streets priorities in the grant that the town submitted this winter. Because we haven't actually received that funding and because accessibility in those areas is important, the highway superintendent proposed reappropriating what we actually have left over from the complete streets to fund the shared streets priorities that haven't yet been funded by the state.
So when I asking for additional funds, we already have these funds.
Yes. So the wording in the language from the 2017 article though wouldn't be it wouldn't be legal to spend that funding for these projects which are changing scope.
I was concerned if this was another expenditure, but it's not.
No, it's a reappropriation. So then before we get into free cash, I just want to mention for the special town meeting, as we have anticipated and expected, we have about $1,700 in prior year bills. We have the $260,000 to finish out the FY21 GR assessment, and we have the offset to the conservation fund, which is to correct the issue that happened in the closing out of the books, I believe, in FY20. So, so with that, Mr. Chairman, we do, it's my recommendation that we need to fund all the special town meeting articles in full. That comes up to out of the 900,000 in free cash available. That takes out the cost of special town meeting articles of $322,350.72. So that affects our ability to fund capital with free cash anyways in the annual town meeting. I can see like initially, and I wanted to have something ready for tomorrow night for the FinCom discussion. That's why I made like making these initial recommendations. But what I'm recommending is based on the fact that that I believe last year we funded 2 new fully equipped police vehicles. That we defer Article 17 for like an additional new police vehicle this time, at least until special town meeting. That unfortunately I'll also defer the Trails Committee feasibility study, and we can continue pursuing state funding and grant funding for that purpose with the Trails Committee. That we also defer Article 23 for town hall renovations. I know the building commissioner is interested in finishing up and fully utilizing all the $65,000 in funding that's already been appropriated, and then at the end of the summer, really assessing the work forward, and on the lower level of town hall, and also like any additional funding that's needed for the bathrooms on the first floor at that point. So we can defer for 23 until then as well. For the other,
Can I ask a question about that?
yes.
And I have no problem. I have no problem with personally deferring Article 23. Is there any way that and maybe we've already looked into this, but now that they've eased kind of the restrictions on what the CARES Act can be used for and the level of reimbursement, the percentage, is there any way that we could look into whether or not any of the renovations are eligible through the CARES Act, as some of the measures specifically that we took on the first floor were related to COVID-19 and the pandemic. So I think it might be worth a shot, and we have time to look into it now. So maybe that might be worthwhile to see if any of it could be funded by that.
Absolutely.
Even 10,000, we'll take anything at this point.
So then, to be clear, like at this point, I am recommending at least initially the funding of the first to 7-year lease payment on a new fire engine, $100,000 for a forestry truck, $122,000 for the utility tractor with the 21-inch boom.
Can I ask a question about the truck?
1-foot boom, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question about the forestry truck, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My question is, I think and maybe this is crazy and maybe I'm not remembering the timeline correctly, but I think we replaced a forestry truck or one of the trucks in the fire department. Do we know what they're doing with the old one? Like, I can't remember if it was auctioned, if they're still using it. Is that not, does the highway department need a different type of forestry truck? Are these things we can ask?
So yes, I believe we have a scoop truck right now, but under the what Mr. Perry, I believe, has been proposing is that we do away, so we auction off the scoop truck based on the scoop operator so called, and I know I'm completely butchering that. The scoop operator is retiring, so it's always been the plan, I believe, Mr. Perry, and I believe of the town and his 5-year plans to get rid of the scoop truck, which is older anyway, to auction that off, and then that funding would help subsidize the purchase.
Okay. I mean, that helps, but I guess my question is, we may not need a truck at all. So if we could ask the fire chief what, I could even be misremembering, maybe it was something else, but I think we just replaced a forestry truck. So there was an old forestry truck, and I don't know if they're still using it for something or if it could be.
So the forestry truck would be for the highway department.
Correct, but I'm saying the fire department had a specific forestry truck that I believe it was old. It was, 1980s. It was not new or great, but I just think we might want to have a conversation, and I'm fine supporting this. I want to be very clear. But I think if we could avoid a purchase, if we didn't have to, especially, FY '22 is tough, and every penny matters, then at least have a conversation and reach out and just ask if there is a truck buying around, that's all.
Understood.
And there's probably not, I just want to be clear. I'm probably misreading it.
If it's from the 1980s, I'm not
It may not be good.
They may use it for cruise night
Mhm.
next door.
Because it's from that era.
But it's an interesting question if there is.
I have a question in regards to Article 19. I hear FinCom talking about possibility that we're $1.4 million over the levy. As I look at the sheet, I noticed that Mr. Ferry has said that forestry truck is first priority. I wonder what priority the utility tractor with the 21-foot boom is for $122,000. Wondering if that could wait a year.
So like a few things, Mr. Ferry is actually planning on joining the FinCom meeting tomorrow night. So when I think so at that point, so I know he will be further able to outline what the needs are with the boom. I know the boom that he he recently purchased actually another boom. But the problem with booms, is based on the work that booms do. They are eating up and chopping up, crazy Russian debris on a regular basis. So he currently has two booms. One boom is not operational, I believe. So he only actually has one boom with no spare, and based on the fact that he doesn't have a backup and he really needs two. I believe that is the genesis of the request, and also the tractor, I believe he has an old and very outdated tractor that he is hoping to auction off as well. That's essentially not in any way modern and barely operational, but he would be able to speak to those specific issues, I think, better tomorrow night. To the point about finances, and this is really first in my mind, for the funding source of what we're proposing to fund at this point, with the exception of the reappropriation article, so and also with the exception of the $25,000 CPC article, the articles that I'm recommending funding right now with the special town meeting, the funding source would come from free cash. And right now we have $900,612 available. And so if we were to fund these recommendations out of free cash right now, that would cost $712,463.51. I know it's a priority of the town, and I believe and agree with the priority. I like to always leave hold back free cash, just in the event of any type of emergency contingency. So
I have a question about that though.
Yeah.
So for articles, to Selectman Hull's point, obviously the forestry truck is important.
Yes.
And probably the utility tractor is important too. And Mr. Ferry would only put it on here if he needed it, has been my experience with him. My point, I guess my question, and please tell me if it's not possible and we can end the discussion now. Instead of having it be, we're gonna purchase one and not purchase the other, defer one. First of all, it's not very clear from Article 19 if it's an outright purchase. It just says to be expended, unlike Article 18, which clearly says to purchase. So I think that probably needs to be corrected. Why can't we lease to purchase both? Is it not possible, or at least lease to purchase one? If we did a lease to purchase on both, we would be bringing down drastically by a lot the total expenditures that are here. on the unapproved, we'll call it, warrant. How does everybody feel about that? Is that even something possible?
It's just that when you lease the purchase, it costs more money.
It does, but I think, right, so I don't think we should always bet that the future fiscal years will be as tough as the next one. So I think I'm comfortable as just one person rolling the dice and saying, I think we'll probably recover, and the recovery will start after FY22. So at least right now, when times are extra hard, we're delaying the hit, but still getting the department the tools they need to complete whatever jobs they need to complete. So that's my suggestion. I don't know if it's even possible.
I'd be interested in Mr. Perry's timeline, as to what he thinks. Can be delayed. Or at least an option.
So yeah, no, and these points are very well taken. The other option that we have, and it's probably not as popular, but it could be viewed as practical, based on the fact that we have that, based on the fact that we've continually been applying, actually to the state for the $118,000 in shared streets funding. So we actually heard, I think Monday, that the state is opening up another grant round for actually every city in town. But because we've applied before, we have a really good plan that's been outlined and submitted by Dr. Z and Mr. Gale and Mr. Perry. That's a very, very compelling plan. And I know, one of the options we also have based on that, if we reappropriate the special town meeting article, that $118,000 that hasn't been spent, not to shared streets because we're applying for grant funding with it, but just really to offset those other costs, like the new tractor, for example. Then then we would only be using just under 600,000 of the $900,000 of free cash that's available. The other question, and I want to follow up with the town accountant on, is do we have any other special town meeting articles from prior years that have unexpended funds that we know are not going to be used for the project or by those departments at this time? So, and that would turn into available funding as well.
My question regarding, if I may, Mr. Chairman, my question regarding, and I'm trying to keep it relevant here, to Article 24, to shared streets is, I know that, and we have talked extensively, and I know it's been a goal to have sidewalks all the way down Main Street from William Street down to County Street. That's a really admirable goal. My question is, up near that part where the road meets William Street is probably some of the worst on Main Street. Is the lack of upgraded water mains and the need to constantly do work over there, is that going to impede this project? And if it is, should we wait on this article? I guess that's my question, open-ended.
So Article 24, you need to forgive me, that project, was that submitted in the shared streets?
Correct.
Grant application? Okay.
No, so
Sorry.
to my colleagues, I'm sorry, that's a really good point. Thank you. The one that we submitted that we didn't receive was a general ADA upgrades around town. There were parts in North Dayton near Lincoln Village that were going to have upgrades all the way down to the Main Street area, sort of what we would consider to be the southern part of Dayton. This article, I believe, is not relative to that. This article is specifically relative to doing something on Main Street. Sidewalks on Main Street is my interpretation from this Article 24. I don't think that's related to the one we did with Mr. Gale. I could be wrong.
So so what Article 24, like, is currently intended,
Mhm.
that would fund what was submitted, actually through you, Dr. V, Mr. Ferry, Mr. Gill, through the shared streets grant application, because we have not received funding for that through the state at this point.
Why is Article 24 in my agenda? Maybe I am incorrect. It's talking about accepting a gift of real estate. Oh, I've been reading the wrong thing the whole time. Okay, thank you. Well, that helps actually.
Sorry for the confusion. So where is the new,
Yeah, where is that new shared streets article? I guess is my question.
no,
No, that's the rezoning. This is why I kept asking the questions
Yeah, no,
about
I
the
get it.
lot.
sorry, I was working on.
It's okay. No, this happens when we make changes all the time. Sorry, everyone.
Nope,
Article 26.
No, that's more like changing to allow different.
So this is changed. This is changed.
Yes, yes. And I don't even see the 118 in here at all.
so I apologize, there's been so many iterations.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Karen. It's in the special
Oh,
meeting
okay.
town hall, not just. Yep, it's Article 5 on the special, so we just need to put it back in the annual. That's all. Okay. Does everyone see that? You'll
Sorry for
prefer
the
it,
confusion.
yeah. So again, it's Article, thank you, Karen, very much. It's Article 5. Yep. Sorry about that. Okay, yes, you are correct. And now that I can see it, it is to fund what we were hoping the shared streets and spaces grant, if we had received it, would have funded.
So it is not on Main Street.
It's not. Nope. It's for, there may be some work on it. I can't recall. There's like crosswalk work, I think. Like curb ramp installations and things like that. But it is not to purchase gifts or anything to do with the Main Street sidewalk project.
And again, the question is, do we want to repurpose funding in that article for the shared streets, or do we want to keep going after the state funding? Like, and repurpose the funding from that special town meeting 2017 article to offset these other costs we have here.
The only thing I want to mention to my colleagues is that grant, that was the second reiteration of those projects. We rewrote what Town Administrator Aronson and Mr. Gale and Mr. Ferry had done. But it was basically the same projects, the same cost. We just made it a little bit, I don't know, like we elaborated a little bit on the project. But it is the second time that it was rejected. So I just, before we vote, and I don't know how I'm going to vote, I just want us to keep in mind that it might just be the project favorable for that grant, and it may never get funded. I don't know, but it was the second time, and we did a really thorough job on the last submission. So
That would be my concern.
and I also want to say, to that point, Mr. Chairman, if I may, these projects were very high priority on that complete street prioritization. There's a whole list that Mr. Ferry had certified through Mass DOT on the importance of certain street projects in town. And the projects outlined in that grant were very important. So I think we should also try to keep in mind, and I know we're in a tough fiscal year, the necessity of those projects. We have seniors living in Lincoln Village, of course. There were a lot of improvements that were going to be made to them. So even though all of them are not disabled, some have difficulties and things like that. So that's my spiel on that. Rant over. But it is, we are in a tough fiscal year. So we just have to, there's so many considerations we have to make.
So to cap it off, I guess, like as of right now, funding what is currently proposed would spend $712,000 of $900,000 in free cash. Like I think would, just my personal opinion, I would like to get to a point where we use closer to 600,000 of the $900,000 of free cash, just from a fiscal conservative point.
And I just wanted to really, if we could look into on 18 and 19, possibly a lease to purchase, and we can talk to Mr. Ferry about that, but that might even change our calculus on your recommendations to defer 17, 21, and 23. So I'd be interested to see if that was possible, but I don't know how my colleagues feel. That will help you get to that goal that we're talking about. That's $200,000, over 200,000 right there.
Yeah, I think we need more information. So do you want us to vote on these tonight, or are we waiting for FinCom tomorrow night? And then address this at the May 12th?
Is that too late though? Because don't you know the warrant?
So I'm new to this process, but at this point, it would be helpful to know, just from my opinion, like if there were any warrant articles that have been proposed, number one, that the board does not want to consider whatsoever.
Okay. Was that one question?
Yeah, that is question number one. Question number two, does the board want to make very initial recommendations to the FinCom with the ability to further adjust, but at least based on the calendar and the timing in front of us, we at least can go into the meeting tomorrow anyways, and to any meetings next week with, so at least initial recommendations about the board's priorities, I guess outlined now. That's just my thought, but.
Yes, I got that. There seems to be some uncertainty as to the direction to go. We are scheduled as a Board of Selectmen to meet tomorrow evening. Could we meet afterward?
We can continue our meeting after the FinCom.
Right.
I just don't know how long tomorrow night's meeting is going to be. I think it's going to be a little while. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a short meeting. But that is something we can take into consideration. I was going to suggest that we meet next week, but it's possible we can do it tomorrow. I do, just to give you an idea, I do agree with those three articles that you want to defer. I am in agreement with that. I would be interested in hearing from Mr. Ferry tomorrow night. That's an item that he wishes the town to purchase.
Absolutely.
I agree, Selectman, Chairman, Mr. Chairman. With your deferral specifically.
Yes, and if I could, Mr. Like, I mean, it does seem reasonable to think anyways that the FinCom may meet next week as well, just at this point. And I know we're trying to, but if the board is already going to participate in those meetings, maybe after we hear from Mr. Ferry tomorrow night, before the FinCom meeting on Tuesday night, if there is one, like if the board wants to meet and to finalize recommendations anyway, so at least that structure's in place. Just a thought.
So we would then tomorrow have to post for the meeting Tuesday.
Yes.
So we're all set with that. If they want to, if they have a FinCom, well, we would meet anyway at this time, right? If FinCom is complete.
Yeah, if the FinCom is meeting anyway.
And we can't resolve it tomorrow, next Tuesday.
I totally agree. I really want to hear from Mr. Ferry.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. Hear from him, and I think Dr. Z brought a valid point about possibly leasing these vehicles. So I would like like to know what the total cost would be then for leasing, but
Mhm.
we're in, as we know, having attended the town meetings, we're not in very good shape financially, and we're gonna have to do some cutting. And, I also agree with the town administrator that I don't want to spend all that free cash also. I want to keep a little bit more in there for emergency,
Mhm.
so.
I also want to point out to my colleagues that this is one of the, actually, we usually do it at the special, but depending on what happens financially, we may not even be able to use free cash to lower the tax rate at the next special. So I'm not saying that to scare, I'm just saying that's where we're at. So not scare, it's just like we should plan for things like that. We shouldn't just take things like it's definitely going to happen, and we're going to have all this free cash. So.
So yeah, like, and not to belabor the point, but going forward, that's why I'm big in my focus over the summer is really getting into forecasting where we're going financially. That is very huge to me.
Well, you did a good job with the budget overview. Do we need a motion to table? Or just maybe take under advisement till at least tomorrow, right?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we, and just bear with me a moment, that we that we take under advisement the annual and special town meeting warrants until our next scheduled meeting, which is tomorrow.
A second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Selectman Mr. Congress.
Aye.
Thank you, two voters also. Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. So in correspondence, we got a letter addressed to town administrator. I invite you to congratulate the town of Dayton on having completed the best practices chosen as part of the community compact, which was signed on October 3rd, 2017. Fostering a strong partnership with our municipalities continue to be a top priority for the Baker Polito administration. It is exciting to have a community compact program available for our partners in local government. As you know, community compacts create clear mutual standards, expectations, and accountability for both the state and municipalities as together we seek to create better government for our citizens. I want to applaud the town for choosing and finalizing the open space / master plan and implement stormwater management. Thank you, Mrs. Fulak. Measures best practices. With assistance from two, you didn't say that in the letter, I just with assistance from two best practices grants of the LTA funding, I was able to complete these best practices and make improvements in these areas. The government and I appreciate that you participating in the community compact initiative, and we look forward to partnering with you again in the future rounds for the compact program. And she signed it, Lieutenant Governor, and she said, "You're doing a great job."
Yeah, she personalized it for Mr. Administrator. If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and I wish, oh, there you are, Nancy. So we just received a personalized letter from Lieutenant Governor Polito. We are all done with our community compact cabinet best practices. Yep. So we did again the Agricultural Commission, the Open Space and Recreation Plan, and also implementing stormwater management measures. So we are now officially eligible for the next round, which will probably be next year. But I think that's great. And I just wanted to thank my colleagues for the work that we did. It was a long haul, but we got the ball over the finish line, as we always do as a team. So thank you, Nancy, very much for all your work as well.
And to think that all came about because I went to the signing of the weed whacker bill. And that's where I found out about CCC. That MMA membership, I'll tell you, is priceless.
It is a good partnership. And now we have a town administrator that's friends with the lieutenant governor. So all things, life has come full circle.
The second correspondence is a letter that we're going to send to Darrell Sands, Bristol County Agricultural School. Dear Ms. Sands, the town of Dayton would like to thank the Bristol County Agricultural School for the donation of display cases, specifically one hexagonal shaped wood frame cabinet with glass around, or rectangle shaped wood frame cabinets with glass around. The cases will be used to house various items throughout Many municipal buildings, one of those items will be the Frederick C. Anderson Medal of Honor that was recently donated. The relationship that the town of Dayton has with the Aggie School is special and something that is not taken for granted. Thank you again for your generosity, your continued support for the town of Dayton. I truly appreciate it. So sincerely, for Selectmen. Oh, I see. It's like a whole thing here.
Yes, absolutely. We're so used to seeing that.
So do we have to vote to send this letter then?
We should. It's fun. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve and send the letter to Superintendent Adele Sands as prepared this evening.
To a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Selectman Segafis? Aye. And Campuchico is also an aye. And just so the board knows, I had to speak to the building commissioner. One of those cabinets will be right in the middle there between that entrance.
Mhm.
The thermostat will have to be moved,
Mhm.
but it's not going to be a big expense. It has to be replaced anyway.
Mhm.
And that's where the Medal of Honor will go. Also, as the Boston Post cane will also go in that cabinet. It'll be, you wouldn't be able, nobody can touch it, nobody can go into it. It's going to be bolted to the wall because we don't want to lose the Medal of Honor. As well as the Boston cane, but especially the Medal of Honor. And next to that is the Dayton Historical Society's cabinet. That's going to be replaced by a bigger cabinet in the Dayton Historical Society. I'm a member of it. We'll put displays of different things that we have.
From the museum?
They're interested in Native Americans who have a question. Arrowhead, so we're going to probably display some of those. Right? We've spoken several times about that.
Are you moving things? No, excuse me, I'm sorry. Is the Historical Society going to move certain things out of the Windsor Davis Museum? And select
We're going to
certain
be
things?
bringing stuff in, and we'll give a key for that. Will be locked, obviously, but as we have right now, we discussed. Nobody's going to hear in a while. That display has not been changed for a while. But, we have people in our society that go through our items and decide what they want to display. So it's a great opportunity for the society, selfishly, but I think it's also good for the townspeople when they come in here and see some of the historic items that relate to the town. Good work. There's other, as you can see, there's other cabinets that are going to be displayed in other places. So I thank Mr. Aggie for being very vocal about this. I think Mrs. Gulak did some work on this.
She did
too, that she was able to get these items for us. These are coming from the museum.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
You got the thumbs up.
We haven't voted on this yet, I think. Have we voted on this?
Yeah.
So
We just did.
Oh.
Oh, I was wrong. See, that's why I'm not
Occasionally. Keep this tape. Actually, is it a tape? I don't know. All those in favor say aye. Dr. Z? Aye. Selectman Hull? Aye. Chico is also. There are no acknowledgements.
Just our administrative team for holding it all together.
Minutes, I'll ask for a motion to accept for review the board of selectmen minutes dated December 2nd, 2020, and also March 24th, 2021.
So moved.
For a second. All those in favor say aye. Dr. Segafis?
Aye.
Selectman Hull?
I'm going to vote present. I was not a part of that. I haven't reviewed that.
Yeah, this is just for review. We're not approving these minutes, but it's for review. I ain't saying that you weren't a member of the select board, the board of selectmen at that time. So I'll, you seconded it. What, did we already, you get the motion in the second already?
Yeah, you just didn't vote.
Okay, that's all. Campuchico, aye. You voted present. Vote to release executive session minutes for the following dates. March, these are all 2017, March 29th to March 29th. June 21st, July 12th, August 3rd, September 12th, September 13th, September 14th, September 21st. You guys were busy that month.
Yeah, that was not fun.
I also wasn't a member of the board of selectmen at this time. I did review the minutes today, so I'm going to be okay. So someone make a motion to.
Yep. I will make the motion that we vote to release the executive session minutes for the following dates as Chairman Pacheco mentioned, and is listed on the agenda.
Second.
I second.
All those in favor say aye. Dr. Segafis?
Aye.
Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Campuchico also is an aye. Approval of the warrants. I'll entertain a motion for the following warrants. dated April 21st, 2021, 43A-21, $103,686.16, and 43B-21, $52,833.21.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Dr. Segravas?
Aye.
Selectman Hull? Aye. Campuchico is also an aye. 420, these second warrants are warrants dated April 28, 2021, and I'll ask for the motion. 44A-21, $102,512.12. 44B-21, $24,789.74. 44C-21, $58,591.85. And 44D-21, $22,425.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Dr. Segravas?
Aye.
Selectman Hull? Aye. Campuchico also is an aye. Public input, is there any public input, Ms. Brady? Is there, Mrs. Goulart?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you an update where we are with our solar farms. Today, we had a pre-construction meeting at the Brook Street, Pine Street site. And our town administrator was there. So he got his first experience with a pre-construction meeting. And it didn't go without a problem because you remember back one of my last meetings, we approved and signed the license agreement so they could cross town property. So I went to the registry today to record it and it was rejected because the plan that had been provided to me by the engineer was not acceptable. So while we were having our pre-construction meeting, we advised them that I need a plan that can get recorded. I gave them the note from the registry. And Mr. Aguirre gave them the slip and told them how much money they owe us. The permit on that is, I'm thinking it's in the $80,000 range. So that's good news. So anyhow, we're holding the permit on that until I can get this recorded because they will not get the permit until it is recorded to protect the town from liability. And also when they pay that permit fee. So I heard you mention pilot agreements. So phase 1 Elm Street is going to be on the warrant. Dr. Z, that's the other one that came up when you and I were on the board, not the one that went to court, but the other one. So hopefully that's going to be voted on. There's a potential that the Brook Street solar farm will be on the fall warrant, okay? Other than that, we have 2 pilots potentially for the Arujo farms because there are 2 property owners. And also the Elm Street site, there is a second solar farm called phase 2. So 2 almost done, 3 in the works. At least those are the ones we know about right now. And we actually have 3 in place right now that have been voted. So that's where we are with pilot agreements.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Goulart.
You're welcome.
Any other public input?
Yeah, this is Mr. Woods, 158 Chase Street. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
That's nice, because I couldn't hear you guys other than Brett and Mr. Mullen. I could not hear Mr. Pacheco at all, and I could barely hear Mr. Hall throughout the entire evening. It's very unacceptable. Can't hear a word any of you all say. Obviously, Brett is speaking into the microphone, and so is Mr. Mullen. The rest of the meeting, I couldn't hear a damn word you were saying. So
Thank you. We'll
that's all.
work on that.
Let's work
Mr.
on
Woods,
that.
I think the problem is that the laptop is what's picking me up, which is why it's right near me, so you can hear me, but it's far away from Selectman Hull and Selectman Pacheco. So I don't know if it's possible, but if this thing can go like over there, because this is also a microphone, that would probably solve the problem, because this laptop is going to stay near me. Like, it'll be close enough to pick me up. Just a thought.
I'm literally 6 inches away from the microphone, so I'm not sure.
It's the Zoom. I think.
It's this thing. Yeah. So you're going to be heard fine on channel 9, but I think for the Zoom, that's This is the microphone for Zoom, so.
Dr. Z, you're exactly right, because I kept running out and listening to the television because I couldn't hear. So I would listen to that and then come back in and when there was something that I wanted to speak about. So it's the transmission through the Zoom thing that needs improvement.
You know what they say, Nancy, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Well, I certainly hope that I can listen to the finance committee tomorrow night.
That's a good thing, so that's an issue that we have to take care of.
We'll work on
Repeat
that.
the whole meeting again then?
Tomorrow.
And that's all on public info, no emails, no chat. Anything like that. So I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session. We will not be returning to open session. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation with an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. I declare. Negotiations with Dyke Police Officers, Mass Cop 306, and Juneteenth holidays.
So move.
Second. All those in favor say aye, roll call, Selectman Hudson.
Aye.
Dr. Stoffus, aye, and Chairman Chico is also an aye. We will not be coming back into open session. Thank everybody.
Thank you. And thank you especially Cable.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you,
Yeah, I think it probably doesn't stretch, but that's the solution, is putting this over here, because I'm close enough to the laptop over there, it's always there. Two?
How you know, I said, when I'm on my computer at home, Zoom, I have a microphone. Can you all get a microphone?
Like a little lapel?
Like a little lapel. It's a lapel.
Yeah, that's the one. We might be on.
It's on Zoom, but I. Zoom is-
Oh, I'll take it off, hold on one second. Thank you, Selectman Hull.